It's not that vicious.
Okay.
When it comes to moving.
I know.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, February 11th, 2015 to order. Can we have a roll call, please? Mrs. Schlueter.
Mr. Alexandrovich?
Here.
Mrs. Evans?
Here.
Mrs. Klein?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Mr. Nielsen?
Here.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Here.
And I am here.
Thank you. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr. Pence?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 on the agenda is community comment. Per board policy, we allow up to 15 minutes of resident comment. Is there any community comment? Yes, please. Please state your name and address at the microphones.
My name is Rob Golub, G-O-L-U-B, first name Rob, or O-B. The address is 8243 South 47th Street in Franklin.
Thank you.
So I'm a parent in the district, and I just wanted to come and make a few comments about the standards-based grading system. I have spoken with teachers and our principal at Robinwood, and Mr. Zilmer, I don't know if he's here today, because I spoke to him on the phone. Hi. And everyone has been very nice and very helpful. I have no complaints about any of the individuals involved. Everyone's very professional and seems to know what they're doing. I have some concerns regarding, I guess, the rollout of the standards-based grading and how it's functioning. I found it confusing to figure out how my daughter is doing in school. It's sort of unclear to me still what these numbers mean, even though I've read the sheets and I've talked to the professionals. I understand that there are other districts that do this sort of thing, but I just have trouble getting past the fact that I have a lifetime of understanding what an A is, and what a B is, and what a C is. If my daughter brings home a C, I know what that means. If she brings home an A, I know what that means. But if she brings home a 2 or a 3 or a 4, it's difficult to manage how she's doing in school, what level of disappointment or encouragement I should be showing based on that. And then if you talk to a teacher or a professional and you say, well, what does this mean? They say, well, she's doing fine or she's doing great, but even that's not the same as a grade. So I understand that there's research that says this system offers benefits, but really, in my experience, I'm concerned that there's confusion. I know that I understand there were parent meetings, but by the time I sort of became aware of this and saw how it was functioning, I think the meetings had already passed. So I think it would have been nice with the rollout to have some more parent education after the fact, unless there was something I wasn't aware of, beyond just the flyers. The flyers that we were given were informative, but were kind of written in legalese, to be honest, and I found it a little hard to understand, and I'm not a stupid, uneducated person. I'm an attorney, and I found it difficult to understand. There is a grading chart. I can see that a B- is a 2.5 or a D+ is a 1.5, which I have because I went and downloaded it, or actually maybe I got it from Mr. Zilmer. And in a way it's neat, and in a way it's not neat, because if I understand the purpose of this new system correctly, it's to get away from having children chase grades. So, and it should be more about learning. So by having this translation, then in a sense, I guess we're undermining the purpose of the system and we're chasing grades. But then on the other hand, because I just said I like the grades, I guess I should be glad that we have them. But then I have issues with the system that we have for grading translation, because a lot of times the teacher will grade give a 2 or 2.5, Very rarely that you see something between a 2 and a 2.5. Well, a 2 is a C, and a 2.5 is a B minus. That's quite a jump in choice. Either you get a C or you get a B minus. So I guess I question that. I guess those are my points. And I don't have a solution, and I'm not saying that you should necessarily get rid of the system. I just want to make sure the board is aware that there are possible issues. I'm not a professional educator. I'm not on the board. I'm not going to do the work and the research. I'm just giving you some information to make choices.
We appreciate your comments, and I see Mr. Zelmer and Dr. Pats have taken notes on your comments, along with some of the board members, and I have notes. And I'm sure Dr. Zelmer will get back to you with some responses to your comments. And we have a report to the board tonight. I'm assuming you're staying for that?
Yeah, I am going to stay for that. I was going to come to any board meeting. I didn't mean to come to the night of the
All right.
report.
All right. All right, thank you for your comments. We appreciate them.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other citizen comment? All right, thank you very much. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Item 5, school board announcements. Does anyone have an announcement?
I checked the high school website, and I understand we have a Mr. FHS pageant coming up. I guess it's the second one. I must have missed the first one, so I think that's exciting. And what else is it? Oh, also, I think that the Sabre, the video newscasts are outstanding, and I like that they, they focus on, recognizing teachers and students, and it's just very informative. I wish that maybe more of our broad citizens might be able to find it easier, so.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Well, I can give you my usual announcements. The Pom Squad at the high school took second place in Division I Poms at the state tournament and third place in jazz. And in the Southeast Wrestling Conference, we had 2 conference champions, Gavin Devine at 285 pounds and Noah Larson at 138 pounds.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Robinwood also had their knowledge-a-thon last Friday, as did Southwood Glen. So,
You volunteered.
at the Robinwood Inn, yeah.
Great, thank you. Anything else?
Music department put on an incredible jazz cabaret on Saturday. That was a fun event. And the cheerleaders went down to nationals this weekend. They left on, I believe on Wednesday, I think it was a Thursday, and they got back late Monday night. And they made it further than last year. They made it to semis and ended up 17th overall in the nation for their showing. So girls had a lot of fun, and they did very well.
Mr. Nielsen, is there anything else you want to tell us about the Jazz Cabaret?
I don't know, Dr. Pats, is there anything you wanted to tell anybody?
Not unless you want to tell everybody.
Everyone's going, what?
Yeah, we have to know.
I had my ticket pulled for the 50/50 raffle, so. So.
I couldn't resist. We
I
had-
thank you, I appreciate you bringing that up, so.
Are you sharing?
Like $190, so. Yeah.
Dinner after.
Congratulations.
And I've already doled
Yeah.
most of it out already, so. But, yeah, that made it really fun, actually, so.
I would echo what Tim said, though. We have some outstanding young musicians in the music staff. The work that they went through, not only to prepare this event, but to prepare those kids. You stop and think about all the work that goes into all those individual instruments, for example, and coordinating it and everything. It's pretty amazing. From our middle school to high school, a lot of credit goes out to the staff and those kids.
Well, along with that, we did the tour of the high school last week.
Oh, yeah.
And Mrs. Umhafer, who's in charge of the band, is very thankful and excited for their new area, the music area. And thought it's just says thank you to everybody, 'cause it's phenomenal.
We get a lot of compliments on everything, especially that area. And at the event, the professional band that was there, the super band, I think they were called, invited the students up to play with them on their last song and to watch them on a couple songs. So it was a learning event for the the kids as well. So, yeah, everyone had a great time.
Was it at the Saber Center, or was
No, it was in the cafeteria. It's a better setup, the way they have it with the food, people coming and going and kind of moving in and out of the area, so.
Okay, thank you. And I have a few announcements. I attended the Chamber of Commerce Annual Awards Dinner, and our Franklin Jazz Ensemble was performing there, so that was nice to see. And then I had my school liaison meeting with Mr. Nowak, and he told me our Student Senate Rep, Melissa Pelkey, will be here at our next meeting to tell us what's going on on the student level. And then we discussed the success of the freshman preview and the new open format that was held. I know Mrs. Larson went to that at the Saber Center, and how it was more free-flowing, and our electives were marketed during that. And then we looked over the main commons area near the main entrance, which we all saw during our tour, and he told me about the graphics and the slogan and what will be put on the academic wall. And we talked about the ongoing interest in inroads by the students and parents, and I shared with him about my hearing from MATC about the agricultural science careers and how they're taking off, and he shared with me a possible interest in utilizing our greenhouse, and that was interesting. And lastly, I spoke with the future management of a new business opening on 27th Street next to Chili's. It's called Milwaukee Burger, and they indicated that they're going to be very school-friendly, so that's always nice to hear. And then also our bowling alley that closed on 76 and Rawson is thinking about opening up again as another bowling center. And they also said they would be student-friendly as they were in the past. So that's the announcements I have. Anything else? All right, thank you. School board calendar, regular board meeting on Wednesday, February 25th, 2015, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock, and another regular board meeting on Wednesday, March 11th, here at 6 o'clock. Next, we have liaison reports, personnel and policy. We have Mr. Nielsen and Dr. Miller.
Okay, thank you. The two policies that are brought forth tonight one is 6470, youth and course options. That's a revision to an existing policy. And then the second policy is 5611, selection of Wisconsin Technical Excellence Scholarship. That is a new policy. And I think we'll start with the youth and course options. We've heard the youth options before. We've had plenty of presentations about us accepting youth options, but in diving into some of the detail, there was a change at the, I had it up here. The 2013-15 Biennial Budget Act eliminated part-time open enrollment and in its place established a new program for students entitled Course Options. And when I first read over the literature, I thought I had understood this, in that youth options available to 11th and 12th grade students if they want to take a class not offered at the high school, mainly at, or maybe exclusively at, an institution of higher learning, higher education. And we kind of understood that. And the course options, I thought, was for people who, K through 12, who wanted to take a course that isn't offered in their district, but maybe at a neighboring district, and that they could take a course at another school or high school. But then what threw me off was when I read, but that's also available to higher education and maybe charter schools and whatnot. So I'm going to kind of tee it up at that point and pass it over to Dr. Miller, because she did some more research on that. We talked today.
Yeah, and I have my colleagues with me this evening, Mr. Nowak, and then, of course, Dr. DeZurek, who will also help with this. One point that you made was that for course options, if it wasn't a course that we had, they could take it, even if we have the course, they can still choose to take it somewhere else. Basically, they can choose to take two courses at another public school, at a private school, or at an institution of higher ed. So there is a list of places in which they can do that. So You're correct. It replaces the part-time open enrollment. It's one of those options, again, for students in the state of Wisconsin to make choices about where they receive their education. Other questions? I know it's very complex, and again, I will do my best along with Mr. Nowak and Dr.
I
DeZor.
suppose one distinction I could throw in is that most of this is from the DPI, and these aren't specific policies that Franklin is creating. So a lot of this adopts and comes right out of the state.
It's out of the statute, actually. In
Statutes.
terms of the timeline, a lot of it pertains to the timelines.
Under administrative rules, on 2D, 2 where it says processing of non-resident applications, non-resident acceptance criteria. Down under D, it says whether the non-resident pupil is already enrolled in 2 courses in the district. I read that a student can take 2 courses, but it can be in 2 separate locations. So,
I think that's saying if they've already signed up for 2 and they're taking them in your district, you would deny another. So that's a reason for denial, is because they've already enrolled in 2. And it's my understanding it's a total of 2, whether they're both in your district or 1 in your district and 1 somewhere else, some other district. So it's 2 that they can.
so then, do we want to have the word "in the district"? I mean, are we talking about in our district?
So it's one of our criteria for considering the application. So if they're already enrolled in 2 courses in our district, we wouldn't allow them to take another. Is that
Yeah,
how
I
you're reading
think
it?
what Zevins is saying is in the event that they were taking 1 in one district,
Mhm.
or at a university, and 1 in our district, just the phrase "in the district" creates a little problem. So we could get away without the "in the district," meaning 2 courses.
Okay,
Correct?
That's what I was saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that we could make that change.
So you're looking under course options. There's youth options and course options. You're looking under course
Yeah, I
options.
was looking under course options.
Okay.
Yeah, Youth Options has a different limit. I think it's 18 credits. 18 credits, yeah. Total in the program.
And then I had a general question about our own practices regarding, do we ever in our district charge for books to our students for any courses? And the reason I'm asking that is because state law requires that we pay the amount equal to the cost of providing for the course, and then and the families are not required to pay any cost for the course. And then in here, we say we're going to pay for books and fees. And so we're supposed to be equal in that way, so I'm wondering, do we charge our own students for any books?
Well, I read that to mean institutions with post-secondary institutions.
That's where I read that also,
Right,
so,
where you're paying for your books.
Okay.
Everyone pays. So
so that's okay then?
Yep.
Okay.
I also read that we're supposed to get those books back, that they don't get to keep the books.
Yeah,
So
matter of fact, a
we're
couple years ago,
supposed
we
to
had
get
to
them back.
charge some kids before they graduated, if I recall, to pay us before they did that.
Oh, so we get the books back and then we can reuse them?
Resell them, I
Resell them?
suppose.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
I had a question on, when it comes to us accepting non-resident course option students. It lists 6 criteria that we can use to base our decision on. And then the following paragraph says that we can request a copy of any expulsion findings and orders pertaining to the student. But it doesn't actually specify up above that we can use that as a criteria for making our decision as to whether to accept them or not. Is that just kind of implied, or is that something that we should spell out?
You still have the discretion to do that. Matter of fact, just recently, the open enrollment provision on the form used to have a place in there that you could check if someone was expelled or in a suspension process, and they took that off now because they felt there was some prejudice going on. But you still have the right as a home district to be able to ask for records, ask for status, and see what's going on, and then make your decision based on some of those things.
What makes course options a little bit more tricky is the window is real short. Youth options, we bring them to you twice a year. It's very strategic. There's a frame. Parents can request this week to start something in 2 weeks. So you have to work through this very quick, and the high school, the few that have come through, they've done a good job of being very strategic and making sure they look through all the records and all the information, but it is tricky because there is a real fast turnaround time. And once they apply, they don't have to let you know. There's like, everybody gets their information at the same time. There's no succession of order in it, so it's a very different process for us to work through.
So we've actually accepted a request already?
We've had, we've actually denied a request that didn't meet criteria in the district. And we did have a student this summer, one of our students who happened to be a special education student, which, who chose to take some online courses that we had to accept.
So it's already in place, or?
Yes, when the law passed, it
Oh.
was instantly
Instantly?
available.
Sounds like a state program to me, and we just pay. So, as a policy, I will not support this, because I really think we're muddying the waters here on what the local district should be doing in terms of offering options. This is so complicated, and it's, you know, we're getting outside our core mission of, you know, focusing on our students and providing a program that, you know, gets kids' career and future education ready. But what's this shopping around and all this? I'm not going to support this.
So when we have a student that would apply to take a course in our district under course options, then does our district receive funds for that student coming in and taking that class? Like the home district would have to pay the, that's how that would work, right? Just
Yeah.
like, okay.
And they're using the open enrollment dollar amount
Mhm.
and taking 1/7 of that per credit.
That's right, I remember. One of the things that I was thinking as I was reading through this, fresh off our tour at the high school, was the TV tech area, and how it's so cutting edge, and not a lot of districts in the area have something like that. I could potentially see people reaching out to try and take advantage of something that we offer here. That was just an application of how some of this might work, so.
Bottom line to all this is, it's law.
Right.
You do it, that's simple as that.
I can just raise my response to that question of expulsion. As you look at B, it references whether the pupil is currently enrolled in Wisconsin public school. I think that would hit that question.
You're right, if they were expelled, they would no longer be enrolled. Right. Good point, thanks.
And I think just one point to Linda's question, I understand what you're saying, but to try to be more strategic in our work, in 16, 17, we're expected to have career academic plans in place for all of our students. And our goal is to use that plan to guide course options. So if we legitimately didn't offer something and it really was in the best interest of a child's career path, we would want to assist them in finding those opportunities. So our plan is to attempt to be very strategic and assist students in getting what they need to be prepared for career college readiness. So that's our plan, to try to work with it more strategically.
Right. I think that adopting this policy and administrative rule simply ensures that we comply with state law. It doesn't necessarily mean that we condone the state law. It just means that we are going to comply with it.
That's right.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve policy 6470 with the change to the administrative rule, removing "in the district." Do I hear that motion?
I would make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Larson, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Klein. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Witkowski,
No.
Mrs. Evans,
Aye.
Mr. Alexandrovich.
Aye.
I will say yes. Mr. Nielsen,
Aye.
Mrs. Larson,
Aye.
Mrs. Klein.
Aye.
6 6 to 1.
Motion carries 6-1. And can I just say, I don't know if this affects the policy when it's being put into the board docs permanently, but when I'm looking at it right now, it says medication policy at the top of it.
Yeah, there are some edits that I think I took care of in the last repost of the.
So I don't know if that-
Yeah, I don't know
okay.
what drifted in there, but
Okay.
the most recent repost of it in board docs should not have any of those errors, but I will certainly check that carefully.
Thanks. Mr. Nielsen?
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next policy, I have to look at the agenda here. Oh, it is 5611, okay. It's on the memo, read 5610, that's why I was just trying to, okay, the next policy is 5611. This is a new policy, Selection of Wisconsin Technical Education, Higher Education Scholarships. There's the policy on the first page, followed by the administrative rules. There was a recent change to that I know came out today in email, but I don't have it in front of me, and it was moving the second paragraph on the administrative rule, if I have this right, Dr. Moore. Second paragraph of the administrative rule has now been put into the policy.
Correct.
One that starts by February 25th of the school year. The school board will designate the appropriate number of seniors. That just, because administrative rules can be changed, but by putting that action in the policy, it means that it gives the school board the authority. It just spelled out a little cleaner in the policy, and that if there's any changes as to who will be doing it, then it would have to be a policy change. We all understand that this is going to be done at the administrative level and the guidance level, and that'll just come before us for explanation and approval, but felt it was important to move that out of administrative rule into policy.
And by it saying high school seniors, I assume that we will have a list of multiple ones in case the top one or two decide to go to school out of state, similar to how we do it for the other scholarships.
Yeah, I met with, Judy and I worked on this, and Mike knows about this, and he knows about the other policy that goes along with it from the same organization, the Higher Education Aids Board. And this parallels that academic policy. And yes, there's a ranking system, so that if someone's not interested or gets disqualified or whatever, you just move right down the ranks.
Okay.
And there's a tie-breaking system and everything.
Yeah, it seemed quite complex, the ranking system. Is that going to be a big resource impact for somebody to have to keep track of all that?
Guidance does it, and when I was talking with Keith about it, he was not concerned at all and being able to figure it out, even though, you know, when you get to a GPA of technical courses only, you have to do some calculating.
Okay.
Do you feel there's any reason to have an appeal process for this?
It's part of the statute, actually. I think it's part of the statute to have that.
I think it's appealed to
There
the state
might be-
superintendent, right?
The language that was adopted for ranking and tie-breaking is right from the Higher Education Aid Board. It's their recommended language, and I don't remember seeing in there anything about appeals, but it might be in Act 60, like Judy is looking at. I mean, appeal for
Appeal-
someone who like didn't get it or thought
Yeah.
that they should or something like that.
I think the criteria takes care of that. You know, it's pretty outlined as far as the grades and the number of courses and so on.
How much is a scholarship?
Pardon me?
How much is a scholarship?
2250?
Yeah, and it's
Per year, or in how many years?
Per year.
for a year, and it's split by the
year?
institution, it's split by the technical college that the student goes to, and the state of Wisconsin. And the state of Wisconsin representative here is the Higher Education Aid Board. They get money from the state to give to this half of this scholarship. Then the other half comes from the institution that the student attends.
No scholars eligible for the scholarship for more than 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't see, was there anything in there about an appeal?
I'm not seeing it, but, you know, that's the role of the Department of, Instruction, is to deal with appeals with regard to the state statute, so I will continue to look. I'm not seeing it right now, but
Generally, when the state has this criteria, if someone did make an appeal, they would call us and have us double-check our criteria to make sure we followed it accurately and ask for documentation. And then they would generally call the people back and say,
given this document.
the criteria outlined the selection process. So it's pretty much a done deal.
And do you feel that you might want to come back in a year to review this policy? Or do you know, after you see what it's like, you know, how it goes, or that you might want to put it in here that we should do that? Or are you just comfortable coming back if you have to?
I'd be comfortable coming back if you have to, because we're using the ranking language right from HEAB. We're just putting in, it's kind of like what Melissa said about the previous policy, that by doing this, we're saying that, I mean, it's in law, it's in the law that you have to have this if you're going to do the policy, if you're going to do the scholarship. We want to do the scholarship, so we need to have this in. And so it's a little bit boilerplate, and it's pretty well laid out, even down to the tie-breaking system. So if you wanted to revisit it for some reason to add language about an appeal, or if there's some glitch in the system, you could just come back and do that.
It's probably more likely that, you know, HEAB might change their mind about something and then tell us to do things differently, and then we have to bring the policy back. So.
Do I hear a motion to approve policy 5611, Wisconsin Technical Excellence Higher Ed Scholarship?
I like that motion.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Schlueter. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next we have reports and presentations. We have the WASB convention presentation from the district.
You recall the board was made aware that we have an outstanding group of individuals who presented at the school board convention, and I know some of us weren't able to attend, so we would like to bring that presentation to you at this time. So turn it over. Chad, are you leading off? Okay.
If someone wants to sit in my chair, they're welcome to sign up. Thank you. Okay. Ready? Well, as Dr. Katz had mentioned, we are really, really fortunate to have the opportunity to work with those group of professionals on this presentation to the Wisconsin School Boards Association Convention, the state convention. And I'll start by introducing them to you. This is Katie McBride, and Katie is a literacy system specialist for our district, working at the middle school. Chad Kafka, infamous Chad Kafka, is an information technology system specialist for us, and covers a lot of ground, but primarily works 6th grade through 8th grade in the district. Of course, you know Chris Reuter, who's our esteemed principal at Forest Park Middle School. Amy Cowell, many of you may know her as well. She is our math system specialist, and she covers a lot of territory, K-12 for us, basically. 6-12. But, okay. And, of course, Wendy, my colleague, who has just been my partner all along with the development of educator effectiveness, along with Mr. Milzer and Mike Zelmer and Paulette. So as a team, I think we're here today to share with you some things we're really proud of. So I'm not going to talk too long. I'm trying to speed it up here. We chose a tree because our presentation is about growing commitment in this district, we really work hard at trying to help teachers understand the value of educator effectiveness and to commit to it, and not simply comply and do what they're told to do because the state has rules about what to do as a teacher and how it will be measured. So that is our graphic. And, you know, just in terms of background, I shared at the convention, which most of you may already know, is that Wisconsin's like many states in the country right now, and we are beginning to measure teacher practice based on student performance. Now, we're not there entirely. The state actually isn't looking at making that connection until about 2017. I mean, a real strong connection between those two things. But we are working very hard in terms of helping teachers become better practitioners and looking at how that's impacting student performance. So this is happening in Wisconsin, it's happening throughout the nation. So what's happening to teachers? Well, there is all of this happening right now. And that went a little quickly. There are some high levels of stress around educator effectiveness, not just in Franklin, but statewide. And it's a difficult time for teachers. And they are feeling stressed, and because of it, see, I'm not so good with her here. They're kind of shutting down a bit in terms of their openness to this process. It's not happening as much in Franklin because we have been involved with educator effectiveness for 3 years. We're really, really far ahead of a lot of other districts. But here's just some of the things that some of the teachers are saying about educator effectiveness because they are at a point in which they're not committing to it and they're just kind of complying. They're doing what they're being told to do around educator effectiveness. And again, you know, I don't feel that way about our teachers, and you'll hear more about that. So it's important not to really argue about that. It's more important to make sure that our teachers have positive experiences with educator effectiveness, and we work to coach, help them grow, and commit to it. How do we do that? One thing we know for sure, and this is at the root of our tree, you know, in terms of growing that commitment, is that teachers value feedback and teachers want to be successful with students. So that's our starting point with all of this. And what we need to do with that is we need to make the connections to what we're already doing. So, Wendy, and this is fun.
So obviously, you know, our number one investment, obviously, kids are our number one investment, but who has the most impact are our educators. So it's important that the work we do is strategic so that our educators understand what they're doing. And if you remember when Judy presented the comp model, and she'll go back to this, we felt it was very important that we have teacher leaders working with our teachers. And our Franklin motto is a great motto that's kind of timeless and inspiring personal success. So our goal was to have a framework that encompassed all the work you're doing. And if you look behind you, Dr. Pats had this hung up tonight. Our framework is back here. And you kind of miss on the globe, it's hard to see, but it says global citizens. And so all the work we do is to ensure all of our students have a targeted experience that's led by targeted professional development. So our teachers, the training and learning goes back to those 6 teaching and learning principles, and then we're responsible to all of our stakeholders. So we have common district-wide measurements that we keep an eye on to ensure that we really are meeting the needs of those students. So it's important a district have that framework to guide their work. And again, so when you think of student performance, you think of educator effectiveness, our teacher leadership, and our compensation model, we always go back to this framework to vet what we're doing. I'm going to turn it over to Chris right now, who's going to talk a little bit about educator effectiveness and how that's how we're trying to work towards commitment.
Thank you, Wendy. If you remember, I think it's almost a year ago, I presented with Karen Knoll, Jamie Feckler, and Susie Rock on educator effectiveness in the state that Franklin was in, having been an early pilot school district. And some of the information we shared then, and if you think back to the 2009 Met study that was put forth by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that foundation looked at over 23,000 hours of video footage and research around teacher practice. And one of the tools that they measured teacher practice and the impact was using the Danielson framework, which we in Franklin have been using for around 15 years. So that's not a new concept or practice that administrators and teachers work together through a growth model. And through that information from the Met study, it was shown that teachers have the most impact when it comes to student achievement. And it doesn't, and they looked at controlled factors, things like class size, socioeconomic status, the makeup of your school district. But in all cases, it came back to the number one impact was teacher practice. So with that information, that research, the Department of Public Instruction, with people from the state level, Dr. Miller is one of the very first people to be a part of that state level work with looking at a common practice, the Wisconsin Educator Effectiveness System, throughout the state of Wisconsin that was common for all principals and teachers throughout public schools. So from there, Dr. Miller was very pivotal in getting Franklin on the map very early on. During the 2012-13 school year, all principals and associate principals in the district piloted the Teachscape platform, which was tied to the Danielson framework to measure teacher practice, as well as at Forest Park and at Southwood Glen, we had a pilot group of teachers that piloted the student learning outcomes, or SLOs more commonly known, that measure student achievement and impact. From there, we went to a district-wide pilot last year where all teachers were observed using the Teachscape platform, as well as writing SLOs and measuring their impact on student achievement. So we did a district-wide pilot, which was not many districts did that throughout the state. So we had these years of practice, and during that time, myself and Dr. Miller were working at the state level with DPI, and we're able to take back our story and the things that were working and weren't working in Franklin Public Schools and share that from the field with DPI and the people, the powers that be, to help shift and change some of the very early frameworks. We don't have a slide, but if you look at what was presented to administrators in 2011-12 compared to what the finished product right now looks like, it's one of those, like your car last week before you went through the car wash during this time of Wisconsin weather. It's night and day. And I attributed a lot of that to all of the people in Franklin because we listened to what our teachers told us. We as administrators reflected on our practice and we brought that forward and advocated for changes to ensure that growth model. So that I'll turn this back over to Wendy in a minute, as we look at this Wisconsin Educator Effectiveness System as a growth model, I'm going to read you a DPI statement. It says that Wisconsin Educator Effectiveness System is designed by and for Wisconsin educators to support the continuous improvement of educator practice that leads to improved student learning. It ties directly to our mission and vision as a district, as well as our belief in continuous improvement for our students throughout the district. I'm sorry.
So Chris neglected to tell you that most recently he was selected by the Department of Public Instruction to attend a national conference. Could you just share a little bit about that?
Since we've been working so closely on the teacher practice side of educator effectiveness as a state, because obviously that's the largest population of people that it affects throughout the state, there's also the principal practice that principals write SLOs that are observed, they upload artifacts around their practice. That wasn't necessarily that it was neglected, it just was kind of put second because the teacher population is higher than the principal population in the state. So two gentlemen from the Department of Public Instruction and myself represented the state of Wisconsin at the Learning Board Conference
replicated existing positions and designed it to do this work. So you're seeing an example of 3 of those people that took their role to the next level to be able to allow us to have this opportunity for teachers in Franklin.
So before I turn over to Amy, the system specialist role is to support teaching staff to be proficient and distinguished. Those are terms that we use in providing feedback to our teachers, to coach teachers, and to actually use the software that a principal uses for providing teachers feedback on their practice. They do the same kind of observations as principals and use the same tool to provide feedback.
So I work with the math teachers, 6th grade through 12th grade, and just going back to the title, compliance to commitment, and the best way to help teachers commit to educator effectiveness is to gain their trust and let them and make them realize that we are a support system for them to help them get better at their craft. So in order to gain trust, as Judy mentioned, we do go in with Teachscape and we do take evidence down and provide feedback. But prior to doing that, I know a lot of us have talked about, before we go in and do any Teachscape observations, the first thing we want to do is coach them up. So we talk to them about their PPGs and what the areas in which they want to grow, and coach them around those areas. And then after an entire cycle of doing some conferencing, observation, post-conferencing, and talking about those areas, then we go into the classroom and can provide feedback via Teachscape. But we want to gain that trust first and let them know that this doesn't have to be a scary, awful thing, that we're there to support them and help them grow as educators. With working with the teachers with their PPGs, the multiple conversations that I've had with the teachers, I started to see trends with them, with questioning and discourse or engagement in student learning. These are some of the areas that teachers felt that they were struggling in the classroom, and their areas that they wanted to grow. So through those conversations, when we have our release days and we do the professional development, then I would design my professional development around those areas to help, so I have a bigger impact working with multiple teachers in a room, and then I can also continue to coach individually when I get into their classroom.
Amy, you mentioned PPGs a couple times. You just want to tell everybody what that is?
It's the professional practice goal. Thank you. Professional practice goals. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
You're going to ask it sooner or later.
So each full day of PD, professional development, I devote about 60 to 90 minutes of professional development around their areas in which they want to grow. And like I said, I can have a bigger impact working with more teachers at once when I see those trends.
So I'm Katie McBride. I'm at the middle school doing work around literacy, and a lot of my work really mirrors what Amy does, but I'm going to share some of the other things that we also do. So when I think about PPGs and SLOs and all these sort of acronyms we love to throw around, I'll try to remember to say the right things, that there seems to be an appearance of a lot of things on people's plates. So what I feel one of the things that we really try to do is to draw those connections or help teachers pick a focus so they can feel that success to move to the next level. So when I think about those things and my expertise with literacy, one of the first examples I think about is our SLO, which in our building is based around literacy. And when I think about the building and the teachers I work with tech ed teachers. And one of them, and it's not his expertise to know literacy, nor should it be. So it's my job to come in and make literacy something accessible to him that he can use with his students. And Amy talked a little bit about how we build that capacity and trust with teachers. We have a very systemized way that we work with teachers. So I work with teachers and set up a coaching cycle in which we set goals, whether that's around their PPG, their professional practice goal, whether it's around their SLO, so around literacy and citing text evidence, or whether it's around something else that they really feel a need to do, and we look at student data to make that decision. And then what we do is we come up with a plan, and they might watch me do some instruction and watch how the students respond. Then we do the really muddy part and do it together. And then that last piece is where they give it a try and I'm giving some feedback. I'm really trying to build that relationship up before we do an observation in Teachscape, and that evidence is recorded, and we really look at that much more targeted. And those coaching cycles, kind of to go back to what Wendy said about this personal growth, it's very different for every teacher. I I have worked with some teachers who are at a place where they're learning to teach in a new way. I've worked with some teachers who feel confident teaching in new ways, but they're looking for something very targeted around how do I get, when I work with small groups of students, for that to be over the course of time and not just like, okay, I'm here, I'm ready to work with you on this one thing. So really being responsive to what the teachers name as their goal for their students. Wide variety. I'm going to turn over to Chad to talk about how his role is like ours also.
Good evening. So my role, technology specialist in the district, a few bullet points up there, some of the different things that I do in my role. I specifically work with the 5th through 8th grade teachers, doing monthly check-ins with how they're using technology in their classroom, and that's all centered around our information and technology literacy standards, making sure that we're teaching these kids the skills and the strategies they need to use technology effectively. Really saw that come kind of full circle today when we started talking about the Smarter Balance test that's coming and just how all of that is going to be driven on technology and just making sure that our kids are ready for that. Through the technology work that I do, I was a big part of the one-to-one planning for this year, so getting the one-to-one technology plan going with students having devices, having the Chromebooks, grades 7 through 11. So executing that professional development so that staff was ready to teach with kids having a device in hand every day. So that's a big part of my specialty area as well. Really, through this technology use, though, it's not just about teaching the teachers the cool whiz-bang tools that are out there. It's more focusing on the purpose and talking with the teachers about what do you want to do in your classroom? What is the purpose of what you want to get at? What is the skill you want to teach your students? What is the standard you're trying to drive them to? And then let's find the technology tool that supplements that and that helps get them there. So that has been kind of our theme with using technology through the last few curriculum implementations that we've done. We've made a big shift in shifting to electronic resources for our students. So some of my work is specifically teaching the teachers how to use those electronic resources. Things like the Mathia program that we switched to a few years ago. Things like some online textbooks that we're now trying out in some of our different curricular areas. With the classroom strategies, it's also teaching teachers how to use the technology to quickly get some formative data, some quick check-ins. Mention a few tools up there that we use with some teachers. Kahoot, Socrative, Screencastify is a screen recording tool that students can use if they're doing a reflection or if they want to record something that they're doing on screen and have their voice over that. These are some different examples of some PD that I've led recently on getting teachers to use those tools in the classroom. Also teaching teachers how to manage this technology and manage this digital world when they're doing things with their students in the physical classroom as well as in the digital classroom. So teaching teachers tools this year like using Google Classroom to kind of manage their students and be able to push out assignments and collect assignments so that it's effective and efficient on the teacher's time, but that they're still able to give quality feedback to the students and help them grow through those digital tools. So all of that is kind of centered around my role in terms of doing the coaching, like Amy mentioned and Katie mentioned, meeting with teachers ahead of time, finding out where they're at, helping to coach them up, maybe modeling and leading a classroom for them so that they can learn from that, and then them turning around and doing it that next class hour, and me giving them some notes or giving them some advice as we go forward with that, and then ultimately leading to the mini observations that we do that will then gather that evidence of how they're doing as a teacher within the Teachscape program. So all of that is kind of what we three do in our roles with our specialty hats. The benefit of this, though, is we're really seeing how the Danielson domain, or how the Danielson domains of teaching are really applying to the overall classroom. So I know that when we're talking strategies, I'm constantly thinking or seeing something in a classroom, and I'm immediately thinking of a technology way to help that teacher, or a more efficient way of doing something, or a more effective way or impactful way for the students. So it's nice to be able to see the big picture of how that works in the classroom and then figure out my technology niche that fits into that. I think the three of us would all agree on that. With that being said, another part of our presentation that we did when we were putting this together to present at the school board conference was we wanted to have the teachers' voices heard. We wanted to have them share how the work specifically with us as a system specialist was going. So we each sought out different teachers, and all we did was give them a sentence starter. We said, we just want to record you sharing, with my work through my system specialist, I was able to do this. So we're going to show you a brief video, and you'll be able to hear from some of the teachers on how that has been going.
And note that you'll see just the core, you will not just see core teachers. We're very proud in Franklin that all of our content areas do the complex strategic work that they talked about this evening.
And there's Mr. Vogt saying, we're number one in Franklin. That was to be frozen up.
my work with my systems specialist, I was able to introduce coding to my STEM students. He was able to support us with lessons and just having that expertise. And several of my students, based on this coding experience, decided to join the robotics club at the high school.
One of the things that my systems specialist helped me with was help think about new ways to come up with quick feedback for my students. And when I went to him, we were able to brainstorm different ideas of different apps and tools that I could use, and one of them happened to be Socrative. And when I was able to use this, I was able to look at my student population and how it varied from class to class and give them really quick feedback on their responses based on their knowledge. It really helped me move my curriculum quicker, come up with some quick formative assessments, and in the end, it was a win-win for everyone.
Through my work with my systems specialist, I was able to implement an online classroom, Google Classrooms, where I was able to easily assign and look at student work. I also implemented Gubrix and Octopus, which allows me to easily organize, see and grade student work, and give more detailed and timely feedback.
Through my work with my systems specialist, my music department colleagues and I had the opportunity to explore and collaborate around disciplinary literacy strategies in a more in-depth way. We worked together to learn about the Common Core disciplinary literacy standards in music, and we planned, implemented, and reflected upon a lesson with my own music students.
Okay, so through working with my systems specialist, I have been able to concentrate on my professional practice goal, which is questioning. She has come in to script some of the questions that I have written in class, which has allowed me to focus on which level of questioning I am doing during class. I really want to focus on some of those deeper questioning techniques, so she has scripted the questions so I can take them and put them into different levels of questioning. It has also helped me focus on the timing of my questions, whether I'm answering the question, whether the students are answering the question, letting me see also if I'm allowing enough time for the students to answer the question.
In my work with my systems specialist, I have been able to use observation feedback throughout the year to develop smooth transitions from large to small groups in my classroom, and also develop quality lesson plans that will increase student engagement.
Through my work with my system specialist, also known as Katie McBride, I was really able to adapt to the workshop model style teaching. She was very helpful with some of the lessons and modeling for me and teaming up on some of the lessons as well. She was really very helpful with some of the anchor charts and incorporating disciplinary literacy skills, which you see those anchor charts on the walls there. And she was really helpful helping me make the charts and incorporate some of them in instruction.
Through my work with my system specialists, I have been able to elevate the rigor and effectiveness of my small group instruction. Katie has worked with me to help model and guide me through kind of extending small groups beyond just one session together. Eventually, these students became the experts, and through our instruction and her modeling, they were able to eventually go and teach their own small groups. So really the transfer of some of the ownership of learning.
Being a tech ed teacher, disciplinary literacy certainly isn't one of my areas of expertise, and Katie O'Brien, the reading specialist here, has been a really huge help for me as far as incorporating disciplinary literacy into my SLOs for this year.
Working with Katie McBride, System Specialist for the Franklin Public Schools, she's provided me guidance in developing presentations for discipline literacy in my content area, which is physical education. Also giving me valuable information about the reading and writing standards and how they would apply to physical education. She's also been a resource for myself and my team if any questions that we have. Thank you, Katie.
So, you know, the earlier slide at the tearing your hair out, you just don't see that because we are supporting our teachers with the other professionals so that they get the support they need to be successful and to commit to educator effectiveness, which I believe in my 30 years of being in education is the most impactful thing we're doing right now to improve teaching that we've ever done, is have something that we're all using to measure teaching practice that's research-based, that can
data that we shared with them was our 99% graduation rate.
And then we shared an apple so that they would remember their attendance at our presentation. And that we're all about growing.
Fruitful commitment.
There we go. So, thank you.
And really, the system
Thank you.
specialists
Yeah,
here this
right.
evening were representing about 15 other system specialists, because obviously we couldn't take that large of a group. So their work is reflective of their colleagues, and we are extremely impressed with what they've done to make this role come alive and be meaningful to teachers. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Really
you very
impressive.
Very nice.
Can I ask a question or not?
No.
No question?
You have a question?
Just
Thank
curious.
you.
Can I just ask a question? Sorry, can I? Of course. You know, you're working with, like you said, teachers that probably have, 1 year of experience to 20 to 30. Is it much different between the younger ones and the older ones? Or is age not really a factor? Because you're developing teachers, right? So they start at one place and they end up there. And is that like a predictable process, or?
I will say from my area of technology, that used to be a bias that I thought. I used to think selfishly, oh, the older teachers just don't get it, the younger teachers do. That is totally not the case, because it depends on that background of that individual and where they come from and the college program they went through. And in terms of technology, some of our college programs are not getting younger teachers ready for teaching with all of the great technology that we have at our disposal here in Franklin. So, and then you get some elder teachers, we'll say, some veteran teachers.
Seasoned. Veteran.
that are-
Experience.
Right.
Seasoned.
Experience.
Experience.
I don't have a job. So,
Builds that trust.
those teachers that are eager and just have their personality, they always want to learn and always want to do better. So they're open to that. And you get some people that aren't as open to it, might be a little resistant. So it's really across the board. I don't think there's one straight answer. I don't know if you guys would.
I mean, it's like teaching where you are going to have to differentiate. You're going to have varying levels, but it's not always due to age or even experience. Because sometimes experience, you've been doing what would be considered not best practice for over several years and develop those habits. And it's hard then you've got these new ways of teaching, but you got to kind of step aside and let the students take over. And that's hard for teachers who've been doing it for so many years. For your newer teachers who maybe they don't have the experience into them, but they're more open and they don't have all those habits developed. So it really isn't necessarily age related.
Because I know you mentioned that, when you're teaming, when you kind of look at the practice and then you model it and then you do it together and you call that the muddy part. Is that because they kind of, they know what they're doing and you're telling them to do it differently, or?
The muddy part, I always put myself out there first, because I realize it's a huge risk to put yourself out there. Put yourself out in front of kids all the time, it just changes the dynamics of it when it's like a peer or an adult or someone that's going to watch me. So I normally put myself out there first as a way to build trust, and also like, I'm willing to take that risk and try something new. That muddy part is more so the sense that there's two teachers instead of one, and we're trying to juggle when we're actually going to plan this together, because I may or may not be available during your prep time. That means I got to sneak in some minutes before school or after school or some up with email. That's the muddy part.
Okay.
And it's muddy because certain teachers are like, I'm not ready, Katie, keep doing it, but at some point you gotta push them in. So it's muddy because it's not clear as I'm doing what you're doing. It's like, well, what are you really ready to take on, and what do you still need to see? What's been really cool doing this, cool is not the right word, but watching our kids respond to it. The kids really don't think it's weird if I'm talking with Dr. Zellmer about his reading, and we're gonna come back and we talk real quick. I'm like, all right, so this is what you're gonna go teach, and here's how it's gonna go. 'Cause the kids are used to us now being in a room learning alongside. And the kid's like, okay, and then the teacher goes and teaches it and comes back. So that's where it's funny, but it's really been exciting to watch the kids, the teachers, and I think even myself feel better about things as we go through the year.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Very informative. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Okay. Item 8B is the Instructional Services Report, Standards-Based Learning Update. Dr. Zellmer.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's a tough act to follow, I'm telling you. But you've had a chance to see the report, and I just have some anecdotes and some other comments about how standards-based is going in addition to flesh things out a little bit. Mike and Chris are here to also add comments and help to answer questions. So I have the first set of comments by levels. So about the elementary level, we are continuing to refine and develop assessment plans. You know, teachers have always had a standards-based system here and a standards-based report card, but with the standards-based system now, we revise those standards, and the standards are new, and we have an organized set of assessments for each one of them. And those assessment plans continue to be revised. The teachers will create a rubric, they'll try it out, and many times it'll work just fine, and then sometimes it might not, so they get back with their colleagues and revise it. And so that's the process that they're going through now. I really appreciate Mr. Golub coming and sharing the comments. I already took notes on a next step on identified need to continue to have communications with parents with regard to this. We haven't had a lot of calls on this. We haven't had a lot of calls at any level, as you'll find out as I move forward tonight. But that's one where if you know what I'm hearing is that there may be some misunderstandings that are still out there about how the system works. So really appreciate that clear, not loud and clear, because I'm glad it wasn't loud, but a clear message that about continuing parent education. At the high school level, there are many courses that are already using some of our standards-based practices in their, even though the report card hasn't switched over or anything yet. And those practices include using rubrics, having clear standards. I see that several high school teachers in the place in the grade book, and Chad knows all about this, in the place in the grade book where they used to put tests, quizzes, homework, that type of thing, they're putting in standards now. And this is in the high school grade book. And so kids are seeing how their learning is being monitored by standards instead of being monitored by points, even though we eventually convert to points for the report card and for grades. We have, there are retake contracts in place in many classes. Most of the math department, except for AP, is participating in a lot of the standards-based practices. The English department has many courses, and social studies has several courses that are already going down that path. And many teachers are sending routine email updates to parents about progression on the standards. Assessments in these areas are titled as either identified as formative or summative, as an informative piece for parents and for kids. And examples of work at the different standard levels are being provided. So there's a lot happening at the middle school, at the high school. There's already, but there's still some work that needs to be done in terms of fleshing out the assessment plans and organizing what procedures are going to be. And we have plans for that. We meet every couple of weeks to keep all of that progression going. And it leads right up. We'll probably have to do some work during the summer, and then in August there are scheduled gradebook trainings for on 3 days during August for high school teachers to learn how to use the gradebook. Now they know how to use the gradebook already, but when you in the standards-based system, it's a little bit different. So Chad is running some of those trainings along with Shauna from here. They did a great job on it with the middle school teachers last year and elementary teachers last August. And so we've got this one more step to go. At the middle school level, Chris will tell you that our teachers will say that students are producing some of the highest quality work that they've ever seen. And it's because of the inherent higher expectations with the use of rubrics in the standards-based system. Students are more aware of the learning path that they need to take to improve. And that's from the clear and specific standards. And there's more information about student progress in specific standards that's now available through PowerSchool than ever before. From a kid's point of view, the level of rigor is higher than ever, and there's clear feedback about what kids need to do from an informative process to get ready for their summative assessments. There was a couple months ago a parent that contacted Erin, the associate principal at the middle school, and asked about the grading system and a particular grade. It was after the report cards came out. Erin had a very pleasant conversation, and the parent understood how the system works and had the questions answered to her satisfaction. So, and there was another parent that made a contact more recently, and the parent talked with Chris about standards-based, and it was a very positive conversation as well. And then they started to talk about college admissions, and Chris had a conversation with her and said, if you want to talk some more about this, you can contact Mike over at the district office. And so she did that, and took us a while to set up a phone appointment because she was going out of town. And she had general questions about college admissions and about the mysteries of college admissions in general, and it is mysterious. The parent was mentioning about you get a letter back after you apply and it just says no, but you don't know how close you were or anything, and you don't know what all happened. And so we were able to talk about this, and a few years ago, an informal group that Wendy and I participated in, area directors, put together a panel discussion of admissions people and college admissions people from like 8 different colleges and universities in the state. And the usual suspects were there, Madison and Marquette and Whitewater and UWM and Carroll and on and on. And we asked them some things, and we learned a lot. And they told us that it's the things that you would expect is what they look at. Tim knows this from our conversations last year around the policy, that they look at course selection compared to the courses available. In other words, the rigor of the courses that kids are choosing. And of course, they'll look at test scores, and they look at class rank and GPA and essays and all of that. And they don't take a lot of time looking at each one of these applications. And it's it's a lot of information to sift through, and they have far more applications in most cases than kids that they're going to accept. And in that milieu, in that environment, the parent and I got talking about standards-based and about what difference that may make in admissions. And I was able to explain that we learned from this panel and from the process of contacting admissions people, getting ready for standards-based, and from looking at the grading practices in all the districts around here, and what their policies are and what their grading practices are, that they're all different. There's no two grading systems in any of the districts around here that are the same, especially when you consider weighting. There's different ways of weighting. The way we weight our high-end courses is different from the next district, is different from the next district. And these are just the public schools. So when you take into consideration privates, charters, foreign students, homeschoolers, and all the different kinds of kids who show up in paperwork applications at a college admissions board, it almost doesn't matter what kind of grading system you use. They have, to them, they will make sense of whatever they're provided with. And, and so there's a perceived concern in some circles where somehow kids are going to be at a disadvantage because of this way of grading or that way of grading, and it's not what the college admissions people tell us. So it was interesting to talk about all of that, there's no standard set of things that an admissions board will see from all of these various different sources of kids that show up there. And so it really comes down to how much kids know and how much they learn and how well they learn, and that's what the standards-based system is about. Getting kids prepared that regardless of what the grades are, their learning is higher. And when learning is higher, test scores are better. When test scores are better, you have a better chance of making admissions. So by the time we were done with this conversation, this parent was very appreciative, offered her place of employment as a place to shadow for our students, and I made the high school folks aware of that in case that somebody was interested in a career like that. And so we haven't had a lot of calls, and the ones that we've had have been positive to a certain extent. And we don't have a lot of evidence on how things are being perceived, but what we do have has been okay so far. A lot of the other things that we talked about back at the June 18th meeting when we worked on the policy are things that I think maybe we should work on sharing better with parents, and Mike has some plans to had one meeting with the parent group at the high school. We're going to meet again on Monday, just have to keep working the work so that we're ready at the high school come fall.
Can you tell us do you have any clue how the high school report card will look compared to the Forest Park Middle School report card?
Probably pretty similar. The same program will be used to produce it. This Power School doesn't produce a report card for us, and so we had to get this other program that was pretty inexpensive to ride right next to Power School to make that middle school report card. And the reason we can use a Power School will make an elementary report card is because they're all the same. For a whole grade level, every kid's report card is the same. And you get to the middle school, and really at the high school, every kid's report card has got different courses on it. So if you've got these hundreds of courses at the high school, you have to be able to pull from Power School and make it varied for each student. So that's why you see one student where social studies will be the top course, and a different student, the math will be the top course, a different student, somebody else's course will be the top course on the report card, because it follows their schedule. And every kid's schedule is got differences. So
So have we formerly maybe asked parents for feedback? I know you're relying on problems to come forward.
Yeah.
Have you sought feedback? Just, how's it going?
Yeah, I didn't think that we would have to, but maybe we do. And, you know, it's not a bad suggestion. I don't know how we would do that with a survey of some sort. But generally speaking, the best kind of communication I think we can have is with a teacher and a family. And teachers, you know, we don't have those communications. We just don't hear about them. You know, they don't end up with the principal or end up with me. But, you know, we'll have to think about if we want to reach out some more.
Well, maybe at a parent-teacher conference, there could be, collect data at the conference, and then there would be that feedback, like I said, the communication between the teacher and the parent right there. At the same time, you would have some evidence as to,
Yeah,
do you
have
understand,
teachers
are there
said
any
anything
areas?
about parents, asking them about this along the way? That we don't hear it, but they're hearing it?
I can share that in the fall. As you know, we changed our parent-teacher format, so it's more in-depth rather than a 15-minute, I am your teacher, fourth hour, I'm going to talk about all your core subjects. And you go out those by parent request and or teacher request. And I can say that the Forest Park staff shared with me the conferences they had, which lasted longer than 15 minutes, were very targeted and pinpointed. If you look at the example of Forest Park report card, we just look at language arts for 7th grade, the second course in here. A parent might say, I noticed my child on the report card is being a 2.17 cumulative score in the standard of analyzing evidence, author's craft, and integration of ideas in literacy text. And like I'm saying it to the parents, what does that mean? Well, now the parent, that's teacher is able to speak to the specific area of deficit or success, put out student work samples related to the rubric and show that pinpointed feedback to the parent and say, here's what your child needs to do to bump that score to a 3 or a 2.5. These are composite scores that are averaged based on multiple times of the standard being assessed. So to answer your question, we did not survey based on the feedback, but parents were getting feedback from our teachers that was more pinpointed and targeted rather than on that persuasive essay they wrote, they didn't do so well. I need them to rewrite the whole thing. This was specific around a standard that might be one specific portion of that essay or a part of a unit or an assessment. And when it comes to our retake policy, instead of having kids retake an entire assessment, they're retaking a specific portion written in a different form or a revision or edit to a writing piece around a specific standard that they struggle with. So it's, Mike shared that the feedback from our teachers and students is that the learning path is clear, meaning I didn't do bad on chapter 7, the test, I did bad on justification around 3-step equations in algebra. So it's very specific, and they know that area of deficit that they need to improve on rather than I'm going to retake a 3-page test on algebra, and I understood, 75% of it. So, but I think that's a good idea to think about a way to survey parents now that we're a semester in.
Right, right. And you'll have to think that through and find out a way to do that. There's, with regard to the retake policies, the elementary level was asked this year to try out a retake policy. And then we surveyed them, and we're waiting for those survey results to come back because we told them that this policy is a draft, and we need to have you experience it in practice, and then based on your feedback, we'll solidify a policy for the elementary level.
So when we implement this at the high school, then, is there a semester exam? And when I hear the word assessment, does that mean exam, or is exam a completely different thing?
Good question. I'll start with the semester exam question. Logical. I think semester exams continue. They're important. Our kids are going to experience them as college students in the next levels of learning. They may change though in terms of how they're perceived. They may be, as opposed to what we historically have looked at them as the idea of, are they summative in nature? So at a given point in time, are they assessing what the student knows and understands?
Well, when I look at the standards on the middle school report card, like the German 7 section here, all 4s in quarter 1, and then things drop off. And so you met the standard, now you don't, and
You're getting to the context of that's a first year language,
Right.
first 7th grade.
So it got
Early,
hard.
You're learning basic German colors, numbers. You're going to show mastery in that. As you get into written and spoken language, it falls under this category, but there are substandards, and that will, as the course gets harder, it's going to get more difficult around those standards and what's being assessed and measured.
The misconception is that we're entering into a system that takes one summative picture, so sort of like that, like in college, where a lot of times your final exam has all the weight in the world. That's not what this is about. This is about introducing concepts. It's really about changing learning and instructional practices as well. But introducing a concept, formatively assessing it, that is, working with the student, providing feedback, moving towards some type of summative experience, summative assessments, and then coming back to the standards. So sometimes we talk about standards looping, and so what Chris is talking about, that level of complexity changes. So maybe with writing, for example, early in a semester or a quarter, whatever the case, the learning period, what the expectations around that standards may not be quite as much, but as you advance through, they evolve. Likewise, in reading, the complexity of the text that you're reading, and you're getting into some more challenging things as you move forward.
It's really a fundamental piece of learning. It's like anything that anybody has ever experienced. When you're introduced something at first, you're introduced at a basic level. When you learn how to drive a car, you're introduced at a basic level. Pretty soon you got to parallel park that thing, then you got to back it up. And that's what we want our students to realize, is that there's a period of time when you're going to be introduced to something. Now you're going to have to work to earn and to be able to be, recognized, if that's the right word, I don't know. But for us to be able to say, you know how to do it, is an evolution over time. That you just don't learn the colors and everything. Oh, you got an A in German, and that's it. And quite honestly, that's in the past in education for 100 years, that's been one of our downfalls. We get arbitrary grades based on kids just getting a grade for something and there was no meaning behind it. Now we are able to attach a standard to it and say, you went from point A to point B and you really did good. B to C, you didn't do so good. But the important thing is why, and then how can we go back and correct that so that you can get from B to C a little bit easier.
So if a student gets a 3 first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter, that doesn't imply that there was no growth. It implies that there was a growth because
Absolutely.
the standards are kind of moving, always out in front of them.
content is.
Everything, yeah. The rigor changes.
Yeah, here's another example, and this is just thinking, I'm looking at science here. You have 3 standards: analyzes, interprets data, constructs explanations, develops and uses models. See, there's nowhere in there, though, where I get some idea of how much content they know. And why I think that matters to me, or why I think it should be questioned, is, sometimes news programs have where they, man in the street, where they ask people questions like, is the earth round? And how do I know that they know the earth is, round?
Mm-hmm.
There's no content measured in any of these. It's skill-based, but there's no content. What do they know in science?
Right,
I don't know
that idea, Linda, was designed when we had no access to information other than memorizing it.
Right. I know they can look it up, but
Right.
there's got to be something you carry around in
Well,
your
we
head.
teach them foundational content, so they have the background to figure out what to Google or what to look up. but they really don't, when you talk to employers, they want the 21st century skills. They want us to deliver them thinkers. They don't want us to deliver them fact reciters. So in order to comply with what's being asked of us by business and industry, we are trying to design students that can think and create. You know, the coin or the currency of the future is really around innovation and creation, and that's what they believe will keep the United States on the mark to being a leader in the world. And so they're asking us to design thinkers and innovators and creators that understand there are 50 states, or that there was a war or whatever, but what are they going to do with and about that information? So it's a shift.
And that speaks exactly to how grading was so ineffective for years and years and years, because we were testing kids on their ability to memorize facts.
Right.
And
if you look at the second standard, it says constructs explanations and or arguments using supporting evidence. If you don't use the right content to explain and create an argument and support with evidence, you're going to score poorly on the standard. It's about using the skill to extract content. I don't have to memorize the periodic table, but if I know how to analyze the periodic table, extract the data I need to make an argument and support it with evidence around my science knowledge, that's way bigger than saying I can sit down and tell you everything on the periodic table. So you're still using the content. It's now about taking the content, the correct content, with that skill and applying it for understanding, so teachers can measure content through that. Because I can write a paper with evidence, but it doesn't tie back to my argument. Well, then that's where the teacher works with the student around that content piece.
And I support this change, but I want to make sure we don't get, too far over here. It's got to be a balance between content and creative thinkers.
It's impossible to teach a course without content.
Right.
But is there measurement here, or is there, how do I know?
They're there.
It's in there.
It's in there. Yeah, it's a really good question.
But here's my question, though. I mean, when you
Because
say it's,
because there's lots of discussion about that. And, these responses are right on target. You can't do these skills without, of course, we teach the content. And some of it does need to be, you just have to know it,
but
and
has somebody
then-
taken a multiple choice test on content, and is that, you got.
That's exactly what we don't want.
You got 8% correct, and it's factored in here? Does our no more test where I have to fill in the bubble and?
It's about, I'll give you an example. I was working with the 7th grade social studies teachers, and their initial works that were supposed to be content related were fictional works by the students. And so they got downgraded until they had the facts correct. So the content they needed to argue the point they were trying to argue, they were making up the facts. And so they got called back to redo the work and make it a factual piece of evidence along with the argument. So they're definitely held accountable to using content appropriately.
Right.
What I would say relative to the multiple choice question is there are all kinds of objective assessments or tests. You can have the lowest level true, false, multiple choice types of items. You can also have pretty sophisticated questions that really do get at higher levels of thought. And that's what we strive to do. Or we try to, if we're going to use those kinds of assessments, we're going to try to do them in a way that we're asking for students to apply content in sort of an immediate way. In terms of the questions.
A multiple choice assessment is one of the weakest educational assessments there is, because all you have to do is guess right. The assessments that we're getting to in our district are, you have to prove to me that you know what you're talking about. You can't just circle B and get lucky all of a sudden, and maybe you'll have some of that knowledge, but the days of just spewing all kinds of sitting kids down in rows and just giving them a bunch of information and then find a way for them to spew it back to you, that's gone, and it should be, because it's very irrelevant to where these kids are going to be going into the future. As Wendy said, they got to start thinking about how they're going to create those answers and develop those resources and those kinds of things. It's a big change. People in our era, that was what you did. You took a multiple choice or true and false test. Those days should have been long gone, but they certainly need to be long gone now.
Another way to summarize it is to say that the content is definitely there in the teaching and the expectation to know it. It's just, that's not all there is anymore. And that's all that it used to be. Now, you need to do something with this content. You need to analyze, synthesize, create something.
We now have relevant content. Before, we had a lot of irrelevant content and too much of it.
And I think the greatest example of that is in social studies. We want students to be exposed to what happened and what makes us who we are as a society. So every grade level from kindergarten through 12 is assigned content that they use to apply the skills they're learning. So we make sure they're exposed to multiple contents around social studies, but it's about the application of that. So, you know, some it's historical, some it's US, some it's, you know, in kindergarten, it's your community, and it goes all the way through high school to the very specific courses. So it's not disregarded, it's just used in a different way.
Many of the questions, the format questions on exams are FRQs now, which is what, free response, what does that stand for? Free response question, right? Which scared me when I took this as a kid, because now you had to know what you were talking about to be able to answer the question in that regard. It wasn't picking the right letter answer. It wasn't picking true or false, flip a coin. It was, you really had to support your evidence. And, I mean, even in math, they're having to answer these questions. And so I think they're diving into areas much deeper than what we ever did. One point I did want to make, though, Mike, the grumblings are out there, you know, and I would agree that you're probably not hearing them. But I think having this meeting you're having on Monday and doing the reach out is something that I do strongly support. I think that's something that needs to be done because I think there's a lot of questions that are still out there on how this whole thing works. And I think seeking that parent feedback is important. But then I would also ask to be prepared to, you know, hear what they have to say and see, okay, would there have to be any changes that would have to be made to make this a better system? I mean, just to have a meeting, I don't think is going to help. So that's one thing I would definitely recommend. 'Cause
Have you learned anything in
that
this
was right.
initial roll-off?
But we're venturing into waters where change is always difficult, and we have parents in my ear and everybody else's that isn't the way I was taught, so it's wrong. Well, that doesn't mean it is wrong. It means that it's different now, but we have different kids that were in eras 10, 15, 50 years ago, and we have to adapt to where these kids are and where they need to be now. And our world is telling us that it's a different world. It's not, you know, if we in Franklin said we're gonna just do true and false multiple choice tests, if you look at our graduation or success rate in any form in 10 years, you would see us probably as the lowest performing district ever. And that's not what we're about.
And I think if you look at our teaching and learning principles, we adopted those from the Department of Public Instruction. The expectation is no longer a bell curve and so many kids get A's and oh, well, these kids got D's and F's. Every student has a right to learn and we have to ensure learning. And the only way to do that is to have them continue to understand that standard at a level that makes sense to them. We still have accelerated learners who will work at an accelerated level. We still will have at-risk learners, but every student has to learn. We can't say, we missed this group and we're moving on. That's the whole shift you're hearing nationwide is it is unacceptable to leave anybody behind. And Wisconsin's mantra is every child a graduate. And so we're tasked with that.
And I think that's all great, and I definitely like what I'm hearing. I'm just saying, not only as a parent with a kid and the kids in the district, we need to do a better job of communicating with the parents, just to let them know, to have them understand some of these changes that are coming down the road and why we can't stay stagnant, why we have to put these changes in play, and what it's going to mean to our district down the road and the kids that are graduating. That's all. So I think having that parent feedback is important, which then when we kind of changed our policy on conferences, that's when I was wondering, you know, is that the way to go? I understand what you're saying. You can't get into this detail in 15 minutes, but now you're putting it on the parent to seek out that feedback. So,
Likewise.
yeah, or the teachers can. Correct. Yeah.
I do want to say about communication, and I guess I never thought about it with the school district. You know, I know we deal with it with the acronyms, but I'm dealing with it with the Board of Health, and when Mr. Golub brought up the communications, being intelligent and not being able to understand our communications in the health department, we're talking about with literacy, it has to be at a 5th grade level for everyone to understand it, everyone in the community. to understand what we're trying to communicate. So I think maybe we need to.
By the way, Mr. Golub, I want to talk to you about the way attorneys write stuff, too.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, maybe we need to revisit our communications
No,
just a
you
little
brought
bit.
up a good point.
It is a good point.
It's a
So,
very good point. We do
yeah.
need to do a better job at that, and, you know, that's part of the phase of us learning, too, how the best way is to address this whole issue. But I think the bottom line for all of us, it's definitely the way to go. It's going to take a little bit of time to get his foot, the foothold of it. But I think our kids are going to come out with a whole lot better education than what we've gone through in many, many years.
Is there anything else? All right, well, thank you very much for the report. Thank you. All right, next we have item 8C, and thank you for coming. Superintendent's report, open house, and Saber Center community feedback.
It's firmed up now. We'll have the open house on March 15th from 12 to 4. We'll have a program in the Saber Center beginning at 12 noon. It'll be a brief program. And then we'll be having students performing throughout the building during the tour part of it, which will be freehand tour. Just everybody can go wherever they want to go, and we'll have staff in certain areas and so on and so forth. So we'll put together an agenda. I'll send it out to you, and then I'll look for some comments if you have anything that you'd like to say, or if you want to speak, or whatever it might be.
It's a Sunday?
Pardon me?
Sunday?
It's a Sunday, yes.
So you said March 15th, 12 to 4.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
And then the other item I have on there is the Saber Center community feedback. We brought a consultant in for the purpose of identifying some groups within our community that we wanted to get input on in terms of, okay, we have this beautiful facility, now what do you as a community think we should be doing out here, or where is the interest to use that facility? So we had a group of individual actually from the community theater group that's interested in talking with us about developing that. We had another lady who is sort of behind an opera and a symphony-type system that wants to come in and develop that in Franklin. And then we had the UMPS, our music parents, of course, we're talking about that. And Melissa, I wasn't at yours, so I don't know what you talked about at yours.
Just general from a community perspective.
Yeah. So, and it was not well attended, which we hoped it would have been better, but now we're going to follow that up with a survey to ask more specific questions and reach a much broader audience. But basically what we wanted to do is to see what the community was thinking about in terms of what should we be putting in there. I can tell you that we do, on the calendar, we have a lot of school events that'll be going on there. They're increasing each year as we move forward. So in all of these groups, first of all, before we let anybody in there, they have to prove that they're financially viable. It can't just be some group that wants to come in and say, hey, can I use your auditorium for, there's some real strict, and you approve the policy so you know what we're talking about. And it really needs to be that way. So it's been, we've been getting a lot of nice comments from people, and I think the facility itself is getting a lot of use on a daily basis, and certainly it's enhancing many of our programs, and I think that'll continue to grow as well. So we still want to get more feedback, and so we're going to be formulating a survey that'll go out this spring, which isn't far away, and just soliciting community input on maybe some specific things. Do you want to see certain venues of music or whatever it might be, just to get an idea what they're looking
Are we seeking professional programs or performances? Will it, I mean, will it be
Yeah, we will be coordinating some of those, and that's one of the things that we want to get is to see what kind of, what the interest is in our community. Because one of the things we did early on was meet with our surrounding performance, South Milwaukee in particular, so that we don't bring something in that they may have already had, because this is really a small area when you really get down to it in terms of what venues people want to see and the interest level and different things. So we will do that. We are not at the point yet. We may get there 2 or 3 years down the road. South Milwaukee has a separate organization that sort of runs everything as far as outside groups that come in. And they do a big fundraiser and those kinds of things. We're not there yet, and we really don't want to be there yet. We want to be able to use this first year and next year to get our feet wet, so to speak, but we also want to take a look at enhancing our drama programs in the high school and middle school, maybe increasing the performances there, because that's what it was built for those kids in our community, so we want to get maximum use out of it. So I think each year it'll be built upon, but it is getting extensive use right now.
Is there any thought of forming a collaborative group with all the area? And then you can...
Steve is a member of that.
Yeah.
That's already in place.
Do they coordinate programming for the whole year, rotate it around, or?
They do, depending on, some, some venues, like South Milwaukee does that a lot, but theirs has been in existence for a long time. And as I said, they have that separate body they do that. Same thing happens in Oconomowoc. We're not there yet. We'll get there eventually, but we've got to grow that. But we have that connection with all those people, and Steve, our director, is in charge with, seeking out the best things to do and
We
what
share the
works.
same audience, I would think, to a certain extent.
Well, you do and you don't. It's amazing that somebody who lives in South Milwaukee may never come to Franklin. But they'll go to the Mary Lynn Wilson Center or vice versa. So it's, I thought it was so cut and dried that if you put something on, everybody will show up. Well, when you look at all the venues that are in this area, Milwaukee included, and all the performing arts centers, Muskego, for example, there's competition that we have to be careful what we would bring in for a program, because they might have done something similar 2 months beforehand. And maybe a lot of Franklin people went to that. So, because it's not a money-making proposition at all. South Milwaukee does not make money off it. Mary Lynn Wilson Center does not make money off those things. So it's not a venue where you make a lot of money. You might get a profit if you're very lucky, depending on the show you bring in, but you have to be very strategic and very careful, because you can get burned in a hurry.
Right. That was something that surprised me when I met with Steve, is that the performers don't take the risk.
No.
If you don't sell tickets, and we don't want to take the risk if we don't sell tickets. There has to be some kind of a producing organization, and I think that's what you're referring to in South Milwaukee. And he is very well connected in the Milwaukee area and also through the whole state. He's on arts boards and things like that. And he said that a lot of times different theaters will kind of find their niche, like Muskego brings in a lot of youth things, like youth theater, and South Milwaukee, they do a lot of musical, not musical like theater, but music kinds of performances. Right, so he said, we'll probably eventually kind of find what our niche is, but it sounds like they're exploring all possibilities, and so it was very interesting.
So does anyone have any idea what ticket price this community would support to an event, or?
It really depends on what venue you bring in. They dictate, the price of whatever that show or that performance is.
Would the survey, though, kind of ask that? What are you willing to?
Yeah, that'd be a good question on a survey. What are you willing to pay? You bet.
Yeah.
How many outside groups, can you speak a little bit to some of the outside groups that we've had come?
So far, it's just been a dance troupe,
Okay.
and there's one other one, and the name escapes me right now, but right now it's just been a dance troupe. But we've intentionally not allowed a lot of people to come in until for example, we just got done finalizing it or accepting the way the rigging was done. So we weren't going to let a lot of people come in there and then have a company say, well, if you wouldn't have done this, this would have never happened. That's not so we just did that. So it's minimal right now. The dance troupe is one, but for example, this year for the musical, we won't have to go to Greendale, so we'll have our own musical right here, and that'll be real nice. So it's working out really well, actually.
All right, thank you. Next is the item 9, the WASB convention recap discussion. And at the convention was Mrs. Witkowski, Mrs. Klein, myself, and I
guess that was it.
You want to go first?
No, you go first.
Well, I've been asked to kind of push mine along. I've got 8 pages of stuff. So I could talk all day. It was great. I thought it was a great convention. I really did. And their theme was every child, every day. And actually, I think that's the whole WASB theme for this year, actually, is that. So I guess I won't dwell on my 8 pages. I'll try to push through it. And the first thing I want to talk about is the impact of charters and vouchers, again, which I've already dealt with before, so I'll try to go quickly through it. But there were a couple items on it that I thought were important. And this was put on by Racine Unified. And they talked about this steadily declining enrollment in rural public school districts. And they said the state is devoting less resources to public schools. And they made a point of saying that there are plenty of great charter schools within the public schools, and there are 214 of them in Wisconsin. Independent charter schools there are 23 of them, and they're funded by the state. And the reduction in aid is made up through property taxes. Something interesting that impacts us is that the amount of money that's made up from Franklin, they passed around a sheet of paper that said the amount of money that came from Franklin to support the Milwaukee charters was $247,264. $247,264 from the past year. That's what they had on the sheet. So, and that's going to keep increasing. Something I found that was interesting was that a state Senator Wangard and Representative Weatherston, both from Racine, I just found this in the paper yesterday, I believe it was. They're asking that Wisconsin's 16 technical colleges should establish independent charter schools, charter high schools, and these are both from Racine, and Racine was saying that you know, they're really hurting in Racine. They've had to close one school, and then they've had to reduce their staff, and they have these own representatives from their own city recommending this, so that I just think the state legislators just have no clue about what's going on in schools. They really don't. So I thought that was an interesting point, because Racine, they're really suffering. And they said it's just not a level playing field, and they made a point of saying that the entrepreneur voucher schools are really a challenge, because you have Mark Newman. He comes in to a lot of these areas, and he can start a school, an independent school, and let's just say he would come into Franklin. He can pull out 100 kids to 300 kids from an elementary school, and you know, it can be a disaster to us if he started an independent school. And right now in Milwaukee, they're just taking the failing schools, the empty schools, and starting those independent schools. And I'll try to close this one up. There's something called the cropping effect, where students leave and then they come back. And that's usually because these private schools, they can't handle the special needs issues or low achieving students. And so they, after the third Friday count, they send them back to the public schools. And what it is a dual public school system that's being created, and we have to compete for state resources. Another interesting one I went to was how lockdown failed Sandy Hook. And it was a man from a place called Safe Plans, and they took the report from Sandy Hook, and they considered how that lockdown failed. Lockdown was implemented at Sandy Hook just a couple days prior to the incident, and they say that schools are the first responders to an incident. It isn't necessarily the police department. We're the ones, you are the ones that are there. Previously, schools were told, move to the wall, get away from the windows, turn off the lights, and now you're safe from an intruder. But now they're saying, you know, a door keeps honest people honest, and killing people is more important to a killer than being alive. So, and no law enforcement was assigned to Sandy Hook the day this happened. His car was parked outside in a no parking zone, and they're saying that you need to be aware of situational awareness. You know, people at your front desk, they need to be able to see what's going on outside. You also have to have a mental state of awareness, and you can't be prepared if you're panicked. So you have to practice all of your plans. Video security cameras. I know Amy knows that the police department now is we have the capabilities now to be able to tap into the school district if we have video cameras if we wanted it. And I know a lot of school districts are afraid oh, they'll be spying, and, you just create policies for that are, the police department is not going to spy on the school district. They don't have time to be doing such things, but just so we know, we have the capabilities now, if we ever wanted to get a security system, so that if there was an intruder, we could say, there's an intruder, he's here, and they can tap right in to our video cameras. Run, hide, fight is the national best practice for K-12 schools, but it still involves decision-making. You still have to understand your responsibilities, and running still saves lives. It's harder to hit a moving target. I do have some sheets to pass out down to each of you with some little cards that they handed out to us about some decision-making processes. They did say there's value to having substations at the, we have a liaison officer now, but there's value to having substations at schools, and if you can't, you should invite the police officers to park in front of the schools to write their reports or to stop in and use your bathrooms, because the more you have a police car parked out in front of your schools, the better. Another one I went to was building a mission driven work culture, and I know Dr. Dessert was at the same one in the back, and I'm almost wondering if that's hung up here now because of that. Is it?
No, we've had it before. It was actually
here? Okay.
sitting in our office, and we
Okay.
just didn't get it out here.
Okay. Question is, how does your school district ensure people know your mission and demonstrate it on a daily basis? And I'd like to ask you all, especially the board members, it's not a test to think, can you recite in your head our mission statement? It's a very long mission statement. It's very difficult to remember our mission statement, and if you don't know it, here it is. Help yourself. Our mission statement is very long. Pewaukee put on this conference here, and their mission statement is short. It's opening doors to each child's future, and they just wanted to make a point that you have to live your mission every day. You have to understand your mission, communicate your mission, and nurture it and celebrate it. And they have their mission painted everywhere in their school, on their walls. It's in their boardroom, so that the board members can see it. And I'm going to really shorten this one up, but we do a lot of the things that I thought that they did. I don't know if you thought so, Wendy. Introducing our new employees. I think we do a really good job on that. But they just made sure that every employee that comes in knows the mission statement. Every volunteer that comes in knows the mission statement, and they just live it every day. So I don't know about. I know Dr. Patz, you and I talked about at one of our meetings that.
Retreat.
Yeah, at a retreat, maybe we wanted to look at our logo again and talk about that at a retreat. Well, maybe we want to look at our mission again too, and
Part of it.
yeah, and think about our mission statement. And I know Mr. Nowak said, each of the schools have mission statements too, but shouldn't we all be doing the same mission? I don't know. I mean,
Well, you have a district mission, and buildings have their
Yeah.
own because they're unique in their own right too, so it's not uncommon.
okay, but it was interesting. I've got all these real long reports on my on the website. On Board Docs. The other one, it was alternatives to exclusionary discipline. I know we have talked about exclusionary discipline before. I believe we've, as a board, have really been starting to practice that. They say suspensions have significant impact on students. The more we exclude students, just one suspension it's less likely a student will graduate on time. That's what their studies say. They also say the higher number of suspensions over the course of one semester, the lower the test scores of non-suspended students in the school district. That's a new study, and I put a link to that, 2 links on Board Docs. It's kind of an interesting little report. Exclusionary discipline is increasing nationally, but in Wisconsin it's going down. one of the things they ask that we districts look at is your zero tolerance policies, because they don't work. And that all came out of active shooters. All of a sudden, you started getting zero tolerance policies. You should adopt instructional approaches to school discipline. So they ask that boards consider strategies such as directing your administration to prepare, and this is just their recommendations, 5-year discipline reports so you could see what your practices are, and then look at your policies for zero tolerance. Encourage students to do assessments and treatments, and we're doing that. Have flexibility from your administration to not bring students up to expulsion unless the state demands, demands it in our state statute. Make sure your policies support goals for student achievement. Implement proactive systems just for minor infractions. Hold the students accountable for behavior without kicking them out of school. Train staff about discipline. And I guess I'll leave it at that. I had more, but there are other reports online. But it was a great conference, and I'll turn it over to Melissa or Linda.
Well, I only had the opportunity to go to the delegate assembly, and all of the resolutions passed. So it was pretty uneventful. I mean, there was debate and so forth, but that's all I have to report.
Okay, I put the links out there and along with Janet's, and I would encourage you just, they're PowerPoints. They're very easy to flip through. It takes, 10 minutes, and you can gain a lot of information, flavor for what, what's going on. I did go to Economics for Opinion Leaders because I like numbers, and I think this group is trying to, make sure that we all have, sound understanding of economics, because it is tied to politics, and we should be aware of that. They actually are going to have another educational session that I think you may have gotten some information on that. We're trying to draw in policy leaders to get some base knowledge of economics. Just like, Tim, you want, individuals to have personal finance. From the macro standpoint, it would benefit policymakers to also have a solid understanding of economics. I also went to Building Successful 21st Century Board and Superintendent Leadership. That seemed to have been a buzzword, 21st Century Board, more leadership that we need to go with our other curriculums and those kind of things that we're seeing. It's kind of rising up now to the board level. And actually, this conference has the superintendents, it has the business people, and it has board members there. There's 3 organizations that actually share this conference. And there is actually a committee with superintendents and board members to study and look at ways to improve the relationship between superintendents and boards, because they recognize this is really going to be important as these changes come through. One of the things that the idea that I just want to leave you with there is that what you have to do is make sure that what's being said around in the living room gets translated to the boardroom and then to the classroom. We have to make those connections between our community, our kids, and us. So, and I think we may have heard that. We need to listen to our parents. We need to be aware that what's going on in the community. And actually, it was interesting that session kind of used there are actually a number of sessions in the conference that's using a different format. It used to be they even mentioned this, the sit and get. It's just like our classrooms are changing, some of these conferences are changing, where there'll be a quick presentation and you can talk, interact with other, peers that I think is valuable. Janet and I went to the Hot Topics session, which is where we learned about the new technical scholarships that was kind of news to us. And most of the other things that are coming up are also high school graduation requirements, career and tech education. These are topics that are being kicked around. Sitting in that session, though, leaves me wondering, we always talk about the board being involved in policy, high-level ideas, but yet then you have the nitty-gritty detail that we see coming down, like how to accept the open enrollment. I just don't get how we talk high level, but yet we get down into the nitty-gritty. Doesn't make sense to me. One other session I went to was superintendent evaluation. Just take a look. Again, I gave you the links. They're easy to go through. I think we have a process that does that, and there's some other ideas out there. Different districts do different things that might be worth taking a look at. Friday usually doesn't get a lot of attendance, but I find I get some really good sessions there. I will say that there are like 3 sessions involving teacher compensation and the whole professional thing, so there's a lot to pick from. Obviously, it's something that's a lot of districts are paying attention to and doing some great things. I chose to go to the Can the AP Achievement Gap Be Closed? And it was the Verona School District that presented. They partnered with a private agency to kind of work with them to see if they could change the number of AP students in their classes. And they started out with a survey of their students, and starting with the survey, they recognize that you ask students, they all want to go to college. They all recognize that they need to continue their education, but yet they're not going into the AP classes, which we all know is probably a very important experience that they need to have if they're going to be successful in college, but yet we're not getting students in these classes. So they really had to challenge some of the assumptions made by teachers that these kids don't belong there, or and they had to change like some of the barriers of why kids aren't going into these classes. Examples of like, well, we have prerequisites, and so they can't take these classes because they haven't taken the prerequisites. But why are the prerequisites there? Maybe they don't have to be there. The summer readings came up. Why do they have to do summer readings? Maybe they don't have to do those. These are all barriers that need to be really questioned as to why we're not getting these students in there. And once we get students in these classes, you have to make sure you support them. They did things like they had a summer school AP camp to get kids ready for these classes. They had an AP support study hall, again, to get kids to support them so that they can be successful. I think one of the better questions to ask in that session was, why did this become something that you really focused on? How did you create that urgency that this is something we want to do? And that wasn't answered in the session, so I'll have to get back to it. Because I wondered about that.
That's one session that we could present the opposite, because our AP interest and numbers have increased dramatically, and you've seen the reports every year. So that doesn't fit us at all.
It's not just the numbers, though. It's getting on all levels of ability. These underrepresented groups are not. I don't know what we have in those classes, but it goes to the, again, trying to close the gap. And then I also again went to a 21st century governance. There's a district that I'm kind of interested in how they approach their governance in terms of putting policies out there and then how they report back and monitor. Janet didn't mention the speakers. Usually the speakers are usually very memorable. I can't say they were particularly this year. They seem to be more teachers, though. It seemed like they were highlighting teachers and their practices and what a good teacher looks like. I think that was one of the themes of some of the speakers. But the last speaker was on bullying, which we're unrolling this, or we're rolling out this new program now. So very timely. One thing she did say that I found valuable was that we have to recognize that asking for help is a competency. We have to know how to ask for help. We have to teach that. We have to get comfortable with that. I think it's not a sign of weakness. I think that's, if we look at us even as adults, we don't necessarily know that or recognize that. So again, the links are out there, and I think she put them right into the agenda, so they're very easy to go and take a look, and we can all benefit from the experience.
Thank you. Okay, item 10, do I hear a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to 19.85 sub 1 sub E sub F of the Wisconsin statutes for consideration of a personnel matter and discussion of negotiations concerning a severance agreement?
Okay. I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Klein, is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
I will say yes. Mrs. Witkowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Klein?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Alexandrovich?
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
Motion carries. Do we need a short recess? Okay, we are back in open session at 8:27. I'm looking for a motion to approve a possible employee severance agreement as presented by the administration. Do I hear that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Alexandrovich. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
I will say yes. Mr. Alexandrovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Mrs. Witkowski?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We are now going on to item 11, board meeting debriefing. Are there any comments from the board?
Thought it was a great WASB presentation that we saw tonight, and it was really, it's always neat to hear the things that Franklin, the district, is doing outside of the district, and how our people are being involved at the state level and being tapped by the state to go out to a national level meeting. There is a ton of talent in this district, and that's something that I'm personally very proud of.
Yeah, I would agree. And just to hear the positive interaction between our teachers compared to other districts too, that's good to hear. Any other comments?
Well, I think, yes, I know we really, I mean, the way we talk about education and practice and all that, it's just very deep and a very high level. But I don't want to leave our community behind, though. I want to make sure, like you said, we have to be able to communicate some of these things at a level that people can understand. But yes, definitely the level of understanding and how we, again, you guys are definitely at a different level of how you approach some of these things. But it's got to work for,
Yeah, communicating with the community, I think, is
it's got to work for
is
everybody, though.
big. Yep, I agree.
Okay, future agenda items. Superintendent's self-evaluation for March 11th. So we'll have Megan get that survey out to us. All right, thank you. 2015-16 budget update on March 11th. District health insurance renewal discussion on March 11th. And anything else?
What about the survey, the facility survey, and the survey on facility plans, or?
That's still in the works, yeah, we're not,
Are we have a target on when that's coming back, or?
I called Bill Foster last week, and he's tied up for a couple weeks yet before he even comes and visits with us to give us some preliminary ideas, so it would probably be the second March meeting at the earliest.
Okay.
So do you have a time that you think the three of us will meet before that?
I don't yet, but I'll email you and we can find one that
Okay.
works. As soon as I find out what works for Bill.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Mrs. Schlueter, second by
Second.
Mr. Nielsen. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:30.